A 6-year-old girl stands in a parking lot, watching a man walk away. Her teacher kneels beside her, concerned. Teacher asks gently, "Is that your father, sweetheart?" The little girl shakes her head, her voice small but certain. "I don't have a daddy." Daddies know their little girls. 2 years later, that same little girl sits across from a millionaire tech CEO in a children's museum. She studies his face with an artist's intensity, then says something that makes his breath catch. "Are you my daddy?" He swallows hard, choosing his words carefully. "Biologically, yes. But I haven't earned the title yet." She reaches for his hand, and he realizes his entire world just changed. The woman he spent one perfect night with 2 years ago kept a secret that would unravel everything he thought he knew about his life. This is the story of a child who had everything money could buy but nothing her heart needed, and the moment when 3 strangers discovered they were always meant to be a family. Have you ever seen a little girl arrive at school in a car that costs more than most houses? Have you ever watched a child who should have everything still search for the one thing money can't buy? Stay with me, because what happens when a father discovers the daughter he never knew existed will remind you that some connections are written in the stars, even when we're too blind to see them. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Riverside Elementary School. It was 7:45 a.m., and the usual chaos of morning drop-off was in full swing. Minivans and SUVs jostled for position. Parents rushed their kids toward the entrance, juggling backpacks and lunch boxes and coffee cups. It was ordinary. It was routine. Until the Mercedes S-Class pulled up. The sleek black vehicle moved through the parking lot like a shark through shallow water, out of place and impossible to ignore. It glided into a spot near the front entrance, its engine purring with the kind of quiet power that only German engineering and 6 figures could buy. The other parents noticed. Of course they noticed. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Heads turned. The driver's door opened first. A man in his 50s stepped out, wearing a crisp black suit that screamed professional chauffeur. He moved around the vehicle with practiced efficiency, opening the rear passenger door with a slight bow. What emerged was not what anyone expected. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, stepped out of the Mercedes with the careful grace of someone who'd been taught how to exit a vehicle properly. She wore a pristine white dress with delicate embroidery along the collar, paired with patent leather shoes that caught the morning light. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elaborate braid that had clearly taken someone skilled at least 20 minutes to create. A small designer backpack hung from her shoulders, the kind that cost more than most of the other children's entire wardrobes. But it was her face that caught your attention. Large, dark eyes that seemed too old for her small face. A serious expression that suggested she carried thoughts far heavier than her little body should hold. "Thank you, Martin." The little girl's voice was polite, quiet, almost formal. "You're very welcome, Miss Maya." The driver smiled down at her with genuine warmth, the kind that suggested this was more than just a job to him. "Have a wonderful day at school. I'll be here at 3 o'clock sharp." "I know. You always are." Maya adjusted her backpack straps and started toward the school entrance. She didn't run like the other children. She didn't skip or laugh or call out to friends. She simply walked, one small foot in front of the other, as if she were walking into a business meeting rather than a first-grade classroom. The Mercedes pulled away, and Maya became just another child entering the building. Except she wasn't. And everyone knew it. Mrs. Rivera, a first-grade teacher with 15 years of experience and eyes that missed nothing, watched the entire exchange from her classroom window. She'd seen Maya arrive this way every single day for the past 3 months, ever since the little girl had transferred to Riverside Elementary mid-year. Always the same car. Always the same driver. Never a parent. Mrs. Rivera made a mental note to check Maya's file again. Something about the situation didn't sit right, though she couldn't articulate exactly what. The little girl was polite, well-behaved, and academically advanced. She should have been thriving. Instead, she seemed to be disappearing into herself more each day. Inside the classroom, Maya took her assigned seat near the window. She unpacked her supplies with meticulous care, lining up her pencils just so, placing her notebook at a perfect right angle to the edge of her desk. The other children swirled around her like a river around a stone, loud and chaotic and gloriously messy in the way only 6-year-olds could be. "Maya, look what I brought." A little boy named Connor bounced up to her desk, holding a toy dinosaur with half the paint chipped off. "It's a T-Rex. Want to play?" Maya looked at the dinosaur, then at Connor's eager face. "I don't really know how to play dinosaurs." "I'm sorry. It's easy. You just make them fight and roar and stuff." Connor demonstrated, making his dinosaur stomp across her desk. "Oh." Maya watched, fascinated despite herself. "That does look fun. You can borrow my Stegosaurus if you want. It's in my cubby." Before Maya could respond, another voice cut through the moment. "Whoa, Maya, was that your dad who dropped you off?" The question came from a girl named Sophie, who just arrived and was still buzzing with the excitement of having seen the Mercedes. Maya's expression shuddered immediately, like a door slamming closed. "No. That was Martin. He drives me to school." "But where's your dad?" Sophie pressed, innocent and curious in the way children were before they learned some questions hurt. "I don't have a dad. Everyone has a dad." Sophie's certainty was absolute. "Maybe he's at work?" Maya's small hands clenched into fists on top of her desk. Her voice came out steady, but there was an edge to it that made Connor take a step back. "I don't have a dad. Dads know their little girls. My dad doesn't know me. So I don't have one." The finality in her tone ended the conversation. Sophie shrugged and moved away, already distracted by something else. Connor offered a sympathetic smile and returned to his seat. And Maya sat perfectly still, staring out the window, her two old eyes seeing something no one else could see. Mrs. Rivera, who'd been arranging materials at the front of the room but listening to every word, felt her heart crack just a little bit. Across the city, in a glass and steel tower that pierced the San Francisco skyline like a needle, Julian Cross stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office and surveyed his kingdom. At 34, he'd built Crosstech Solutions from a one-room startup into a major player in healthcare software innovation. His company's platforms were used in hospitals across the country, streamlining everything from patient records to surgical scheduling. He should have felt satisfied. Triumphant, even. Instead, he felt nothing. "Julian." The voice of his assistant, Marcus, crackled through the intercom. "The Mercer Global people are here for the 10 o'clock. Send them to conference room A. I'll be there in 5. Julian turned from the window and caught his reflection in the glass. Armani suit, perfectly tailored. Hairstyle just enough to look effortlessly good. Watch that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked like success. He'd worked brutally hard to look like success, to be success, to never again be the scared kid whose father had abandoned the family and left them drowning in debt. His phone buzzed. A text from his current girlfriend, Simone. "Dinner tonight? That new place on Market Street?" Julian stared at the message, trying to summon enthusiasm. Simone was beautiful, intelligent, and uncomplicated. She understood that he was married to his work. She never asked for more than he could give. Which was exactly why their relationship felt like another item on his to-do list rather than something that made his heart race. "Can't tonight. Board prep meeting. Tomorrow?" Her response was immediate. "Sure." Followed by a kissing emoji that somehow felt hollow. Julian pocketed his phone and grabbed the presentation materials for his meeting. Mercer Global wanted to acquire Crosstech for $400 million. It was everything he'd worked for. The ultimate validation. Proof that the kid from the wrong side of town had made it. So why did the idea of selling feel like giving up rather than cashing in? Julian, we're waiting. Marcus's voice, patient but pointed. Coming. The conference room was all glass walls and minimalist furniture, designed to intimidate through sheer sterile perfection. Victoria Aldridge, CEO of Mercer Global, sat at the head of the table with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. She was in her early 50s, impeccably dressed, with steel-gray hair and eyes that saw through every facade. Mr. Cross. She stood to shake his hand, her grip firm and brief. Thank you for taking this meeting. Of course. Julian slid into professional mode as easily as breathing. Though I have to admit, I'm curious why Mercer Global is interested in acquiring Crosstech. You could develop similar software in-house for a fraction of the acquisition cost. Victoria smiled, sharp and knowing. We could. But that would take time, and time is something healthcare doesn't have. Your platforms are already integrated into major hospital systems. You've done the hard work of building trust and proving efficacy. We're not buying software, Mr. Cross. We're buying credibility and market position. Julian nodded slowly. And if I'm not interested in selling? Then we'll have a very short meeting. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying him with unnerving intensity. But I don't think that's the case. You're here, which means you're at least curious. So let me be direct. $400 million. You maintain creative control for 2 years. After that, you can stay on as a consultant or walk away entirely. Full autonomy during the transition period. It was a good offer. A great offer, actually. Julian knew it. Marcus knew it. The lawyers flanking Victoria knew it. I'll need time to consider. Of course. Victoria stood, signaling the meeting's end. But Mr. Cross, let me give you some free advice. I've acquired 17 companies in my career. The founders who are happiest after the sale are the ones who have something beyond the business. Family. Hobbies. Purpose. The ones who've made their company their entire identity always regret selling, because they don't know who they are without it. She handed him her card. Figure out who you are beyond Crosstech Solutions. Then call me. After they left, Marcus dropped into the chair beside Julian. That was interesting. She's trying to psychology me into selling. Maybe. Marcus studied his boss and friend with the familiarity of someone who'd been there since the beginning. Or maybe she's right. When's the last time you did something that wasn't work-related? I go out with Simone. Taking your girlfriend to business dinners doesn't count. I mean something real. Family time. A hobby. Hell, even just sleeping a full 8 hours. Julian stood, suddenly restless. I'm not built for that life, Marcus. The white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, the soccer games and family dinners. I'm built for this. He gestured at the skyline, the office, the empire he'd created. Marcus was quiet for a moment. My sister's daughter had a recital last week. She's 6. She played this little piano piece, and she was so nervous her hands were shaking. But when she finished and saw all of us clapping, her whole face just lit up. He looked at Julian. That's what you're missing. Those moments where you matter to someone beyond what you can do for them professionally. Julian felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. I wouldn't even know how to be that for someone. Nobody does, at first. You just show up and figure it out. Julian returned to his office, but Marcus's words lingered like smoke he couldn't clear. He sat at his desk, intending to review the Mercer proposal, but instead found himself opening the bottom drawer where he kept personal items. Beneath some old business cards and a watch that needed repair, he found what he was looking for. A photograph. It had been taken 2 years ago at the California Medical Innovation Gala, one of those charity events Julian attended more for networking than philanthropy. He was in a tuxedo, smiling at the camera. Beside him, stunning in a deep blue gown, was a woman with intelligent eyes and a smile that seemed to hold secrets. Dr. Natasha Reeves. Julian remembered that night with a clarity that unnerved him. Most of his memories blurred together, an endless stream of meetings and events and strategic conversations. But that night stood out in perfect detail. He'd been on the balcony, escaping the crowd and the small talk, when she'd appeared beside him. Avoiding the festivities? Her voice had been warm, slightly amused. Is it that obvious? You have the look of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. She'd extended her hand. Natasha Reeves. Pediatric Oncology. Julian Cross. Software Development. Ah, so you're the one everyone's talking about. The Wunderkind who's revolutionizing hospital data management. Her tone was teasing, not mocking. Wunderkind is generous. I'm just a programmer who got lucky. Luck and talent aren't mutually exclusive. She'd leaned against the balcony railing, looking out at the city lights. What made you interested in healthcare software? And just like that, they'd fallen into conversation. Real conversation, the kind Julian hadn't experienced in years. She challenged his ideas, shared her frustrations with hospital inefficiencies, made him laugh with stories about hospital politics that were somehow both horrifying and hilarious. Hours passed like minutes. When the gala ended, they'd shared a cab. Then coffee at an all-night diner. Then, somehow, they'd ended up at his apartment, still talking, still unable to stop connecting. What happened next had been inevitable and perfect and terrifying in its intensity. In the morning, lying in bed with sunlight streaming through the windows, they'd made a mutual decision. This was one perfect night. They wouldn't exchange numbers. Wouldn't make promises they couldn't keep. They were both too focused on their careers for anything more. Better to keep it perfect and finite than try to force it into something that would ultimately disappoint them both. Julian had thought he was being mature. Realistic. Protecting himself from the vulnerability of wanting more. Now, holding the photograph, he wondered if he'd just been afraid. He'd tried to find her afterward, in weak moments when he couldn't stop thinking about her laugh or the way she'd argued with such passionate intelligence. But he'd only known her first name and specialty. And a week after the gala, he'd left for a year-long business expansion in Singapore. By the time he returned, the impulse to search for her had been buried under new projects and new distractions. Julian put the photograph back in the drawer and closed it firmly. That night was history. Natasha was history. He needed to focus on the present, on the Mercer deal, on the future he was building. But the tightness in his chest remained. At Riverside Elementary, the school day was winding down. The children gathered on the reading rug while Mrs. Rivera held up a picture book. Today we're going to talk about our families. She smiled at the circle of eager faces. I want each of you to think about the people who love you and take care of you. Can anyone tell me who's in their family? Hands shot up. Connor went first. I have a mom and a dad and a baby sister who cries all the time. Laughter rippled through the group. Sophie raised her hand. I have 2 moms and a dog named Biscuit. Mrs. Rivera nodded encouragingly. Families come in all different shapes and sizes. There's no one right way to be a family. She noticed Maya sitting very still, her hands folded in her lap, her expression carefully blank. Maya, would you like to share about your family? Every child's eyes turned to Maya. The attention made her shrink into herself. I live with my mom. But she's at the hospital a lot. She's a doctor. She saves kids. That's wonderful. Mrs. Rivera's voice was gentle. Anyone else? And Isabel. She takes care of me. She reads me stories and makes my lunch and teaches me things. Isabel sounds very special. She is. Maya's voice dropped to almost a whisper. She's the one who knows me. What about your dad? Sophie asked before Mrs. Rivera could redirect. You said you don't have a dad, but everyone has a dad. Even if they don't live with you. Maya's jaw tightened. Her eyes went shiny with tears she refused to let fall. I don't have a dad. My dad doesn't know I exist. So it doesn't count. The room went silent. Even the other 6-year-olds sensed they'd stumbled onto something painful. Mrs. Rivera quickly moved the conversation along, but she made another mental note. After dismissal, she'd call the school counselor. Maya needed support beyond what a classroom teacher could provide. At 3 o'clock, the Mercedes pulled up exactly on schedule. Martin got out, opened the door, and Maya climbed in with the same careful grace she'd shown that morning. No running. No excitement. Just quiet acceptance of another day completed. How was school, Miss Maya? Fine, thank you. Did you learn anything interesting? Maya looked out the window at the other children being picked up by parents who hugged them, who asked about their day with genuine interest, who belonged to them in a way Martin never could, no matter how kind he was. Not really. Just the regular stuff. They drove in silence to the penthouse apartment that overlooked the bay. It was beautiful in the way museums were beautiful, full of expensive things that weren't meant to be touched. Maya's room was the exception, an explosion of color and creativity that stood in stark contrast to the sterile perfection of the rest of the space. Isabel Chen, a warm woman in her early 50s with gentle eyes and capable hands, met Maya at the door. There's my favorite artist. How was school? Maya's careful composure cracked just slightly. We talked about families today. Isabel's expression softened with understanding. That must have been hard. I told them about you. How you take care of me. I'm honored. Isabel helped Maya out of her backpack. Your mother called. She's going to try to be home by 8. So she'll miss dinner again. She's doing important work, sweetheart. She's saving lives. I know. Maya's voice was small. I just wish sometimes she'd save time for me too. Isabel pulled the little girl into a hug. Your mother loves you more than anything in this world. You know that, right? Then why does it feel like I'm alone even when I'm not? The question hung in the air, too profound for a 6-year-old to be asking but too true to dismiss. That evening, after a dinner of homemade mac and cheese that Maya picked at without appetite, Isabel helped her get ready for bed. Maya's bedtime routine was elaborate, another attempt to create structure and comfort in a life that often felt unmoored. Bath, pajamas, braiding hair, picking out tomorrow's outfit, reading 3 books. Tonight, Maya chose a book about a princess who lived in a tower. The princess had everything she could want except freedom, except connection, except love. Isabel, do you think my dad is out there somewhere? Isabel's hands paused in Maya's hair. She'd been dreading this conversation but knew it was inevitable. I think your dad exists, yes. Does he ever think about me? How could Isabel answer that? The truth was, Maya's father didn't know she existed. But how do you explain that to a 6-year-old without making her feel unwanted? I think if your dad knew about you, he'd think you were the most amazing little girl in the world. But he doesn't know about me. Maya turned to look at Isabel with those 2 old eyes. Why doesn't he know? Did mommy not tell him? That's a conversation you need to have with your mother when you're a bit older. I'm old enough now. Oh, sweetheart. Isabel finished the braid and tied it off with a ribbon. Some things are complicated in ways that are hard to explain. But I promise you, not having your dad in your life isn't because there's anything wrong with you. You are perfect exactly as you are. Then why do I feel like there's a piece missing? Isabel had no answer for that. She simply held Maya until the little girl's breathing evened out in sleep. In her office at San Francisco General Hospital, Dr. Natasha Reeves was finishing notes on her last patient of the day. At 31, she was one of the youngest attending physicians in pediatric oncology, known for her innovative treatment protocols and her fierce dedication to her patients. She was also exhausted. Natasha glanced at her phone. 8:47 p.m. She'd promised Maya she'd be home by 8. Again, she'd failed to keep that promise. The guilt sat heavy in her chest, familiar and acidic. There was a knock on her office door. Her colleague, Dr. Raymond Park, poked his head in. "You're still here?" "Just finishing up patient notes." "Natasha, you've been here since 6 this morning. Go home." "I will. Soon." Raymond entered fully and sat across from her. "How's Maya?" "Good. Growing up too fast. Asking questions I don't know how to answer." "About her father?" Natasha's hands stilled on her keyboard. "How did you know?" "Because I have a 7-year-old daughter. Around this age, they start really understanding family dynamics. They notice what's different about their situation compared to their friends." Natasha closed her laptop and rubbed her eyes. She asked Isabel if her dad thinks about her. What did Isabel say? That if he knew about her, he'd think she was amazing. Natasha's laugh was bitter. Which is probably true. Julian always struck me as someone who'd be good at anything he decided to commit to. You ever think about telling him? Every single day. Natasha stood and moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. But what would I say? Hey, remember that one night 2 years ago? Well, surprise, you have a daughter. By the way, I didn't tell you because you were in Singapore and I convinced myself you didn't want to be found and maybe I was scared you'd reject her or try to take her or 1,000 other fears that probably make no sense. Raymond was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I think you were protecting yourself and Maya the best way you knew how. But maybe it's time to reconsider. Not for his sake. For hers. I wouldn't even know where to start looking for him. He's Julian Cross, right? The tech CEO? Raymond pulled out his phone and did a quick search. His company is headquartered downtown. Crosstech Solutions, 45th floor of the Millennium Tower. He's not exactly hiding. Natasha felt her heart rate spike. It was one thing to tell herself Julian was unreachable, lost somewhere in her past. It was another to realize he'd been 15 minutes away this entire time. I can't just show up at his office. Why not? Because what if he's married? What if he has other kids? What if he wants nothing to do with Maya? What if he tries to take her from me? The fears tumbled out, each one sharp and real. Or what if he wants to be a father to his daughter and you're denying both of them that relationship because you're afraid? The truth of Raymond's words hit like a physical blow. Think about it. Raymond stood to leave. But don't think too long. Maya's not going to stop asking questions, and she deserves real answers. After he left, Natasha sat in her dark office and pulled up Julian's company website. There he was, in the leadership section. Older than she remembered, his face more angular, his expression more serious. But still unmistakably the man who'd made her laugh until her sides hurt, who'd listened to her talk about her patients with genuine interest, who'd held her like she was precious. She'd tried so hard to convince herself that night had been a mistake, a moment of weakness in her usually disciplined life. But looking at his photograph, she couldn't deny the truth. She'd fallen in love with him in the span of one night. And she'd been running from that feeling ever since. Natasha closed the browser and gathered her things. She needed to go home to her daughter. Tomorrow she could figure out what to do about the fact that Maya's father was no longer a distant memory but a concrete person with a traceable address. Tomorrow she could figure out how to possibly tell Julian Cross that their one perfect night had created the most important person in both their lives. Tonight, she just needed to be a mother. She arrived home at 9:15. The apartment was quiet, Isabel having left for her own home an hour ago. Natasha moved silently through the pristine living space to Maya's colorful bedroom. Her daughter was asleep, her small face peaceful in a way it rarely was when awake. Natasha sat on the edge of the bed and brushed a strand of hair from Maya's forehead. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry I'm never here. I'm sorry I work too much. I'm sorry your dad doesn't know about you. I'm sorry for all the ways I'm failing you." Maya stirred slightly. "Mama?" Her voice was sleep-soft. "I'm here, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. You came home. I promised I would." Maya's eyes opened, dark and knowing even in the dim light. "Isabel said I should ask you about my dad." Natasha's breath caught. "What do you want to know? Does he know about me?" And there it was. The question Natasha had been dreading for 6 years. "No, baby. He doesn't know about you." "Why not? How do you explain adult complications to a 6-year-old? How do you admit your own fear and selfishness?" "Because when I found out I was going to have you, your dad was very far away. And I couldn't find him. And then time passed and it got harder and harder to figure out how to tell him." "Do you think he'd want to know me?" Natasha's eyes filled with tears. "I think if your dad met you, he'd fall in love with you instantly. Because you're the most incredible person I've ever known. Can we find him?" Maya was fully awake now, sitting up with an urgency that broke Natasha's heart. "Can we tell him about me?" Natasha pulled her daughter into her arms. "Maybe. I need to think about the right way to do that. But Maya, I need you to understand something. No matter what happens with your dad, you are loved. So loved. By me, by Isabel, by your grandparents, by everyone who knows you. But not by my dad. Because he doesn't know me." The simple logic was irrefutable and devastating. "I'm going to try to fix that." Natasha made the decision in that moment, fear and all. "I'm going to try to find your dad and tell him about you. But it might take some time, okay? These things are complicated." "Okay." Maya settled back into bed, satisfied for now. "Mama?" "Yes, baby?" "When you tell him, will you show him my drawings? So he knows I'm good at art?" Natasha's heart cracked wide open. "I will show him every single one of your beautiful drawings." After Maya fell back asleep, Natasha sat in her own room and stared at her phone. Julian Cross's company website was still open in her browser. She could call tomorrow. Make an appointment. Just show up. Or she could keep doing what she'd been doing, protecting herself and Maya from the risk of rejection, from the chaos of appending their carefully constructed life. But Raymond was right. Maya deserved answers. She deserved the chance to know her father. And maybe, just maybe, Julian deserved the chance to know his daughter. Natasha took a deep breath and typed an email before she could talk herself out of it. "Dear Mr. Cross. We met 2 years ago at the California Medical Innovation Gala. I'm not sure if you remember me, but we spent an evening together. I have some information that I need to share with you in person. It's urgent and personal. Would you be available to meet this week? Dr. Natasha Reeves." Her finger hovered over the send button. This email would change everything. Once sent, there was no taking it back. She thought about Maya's face. About her daughter's question. "Does he know about me?" Natasha pressed send. The next morning at Riverside Elementary, Mrs. Rivera made good on her mental note from the previous day. During her planning period, she walked down to the counseling office where Dr. Pamela Stone worked. Pamela was in her early 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an office full of cozy furniture designed to make children feel safe. "I need to talk to you about one of my students." Mrs. Rivera settled into the chair across from Pamela's desk. "Maya Reeves. First grade. She's struggling, and I think she needs more support than I can provide in the classroom. Tell me about her." Mrs. Rivera described Maya's arrival each day in the Mercedes. The little girl's isolation from her peers. Her perfectly composed behavior. And most concerning, yesterday's comment during their family discussion. She said her father doesn't know she exists. Mrs. Rivera's voice was heavy with concern. A 6-year-old shouldn't be carrying that kind of awareness, that kind of pain. Pamela made notes in her file. Does she have a relationship with her mother? The mother is a doctor. Works long hours from what I understand. There's a nanny who seems to be the primary caregiver. Maya speaks warmly about her, but there's this underlying loneliness that just breaks my heart. I'll schedule some sessions with Maya. Pamela pulled up her calendar. In the meantime, I'd like to have a meeting with the mother. Get a fuller picture of the family dynamic. Good luck getting her to attend. From what I understand, her schedule is pretty inflexible. We'll make it work. Pamela's tone suggested she'd dealt with busy parents before and knew how to make them understand their child needed them. Every parent finds time when they understand how serious the situation is. That afternoon, Pamela pulled Maya out of class for their first session. The counseling office had a play therapy room attached, filled with toys and art supplies and games designed to help children express what words couldn't capture. "Hi Maya. I'm Dr. Stone, but you can call me Dr. Pam if that's easier. I talk to kids sometimes about things that are on their minds. Mrs. Rivera thought maybe you and I could spend some time together. Would that be okay?" Maya studied this new adult with cautious eyes. "Am I in trouble?" "Not at all. You're not in trouble. I just like getting to know the students here, especially the really smart, thoughtful ones." "How do you know I'm smart and thoughtful?" "You just met me." Pamela smiled. "That question right there tells me you're smart and thoughtful. Come on, I want to show you something." She led Maya into the play therapy room. Maya's eyes widened slightly at the array of toys and art supplies. "You can play with anything in here. No rules except be respectful of the materials. What catches your eye?" Maya gravitated immediately to the art corner, where colored pencils and markers and paints were organized with satisfying precision. "Can I draw?" "Of course." For the next 20 minutes, Maya drew while Pamela asked gentle, open-ended questions. The little girl created an elaborate scene. A big house with lots of windows. A small figure in one window. Another figure at the bottom, looking up. "Tell me about your picture." "This is my house." Maya pointed to the building. "I live on the top floor. You can see the whole city from there. It's a beautiful house." Maya pointed to the small figure in the window. "This is me. I'm looking at the city and wondering about all the people down there." "What are you wondering?" "If any of them are looking for me." Pamela felt the weight of that statement but kept her voice casual. "Is someone looking for you?" "I don't know. Maybe." Maya added more details to the figure at the bottom. "This is my dad. He's down there somewhere. He doesn't know I'm up here watching. But maybe if I watch long enough, I'll recognize him somehow." "How will you recognize him if you've never met him?" Maya thought about this seriously. "I think kids just know their parents. Like magnets. Even if they've never met, they're pulled together." "That's a lovely thought. Have you talked to your mom about looking for your dad?" "She says it's complicated." Adults always say that when they mean it's hard and they don't want to do it. Out of the mouths of babes, Pamela thought. What would you say to your dad if you could? Maya picked up a new piece of paper and began writing in the careful print of a first grader. Dear Daddy, today I went to school and learned about families. I don't have the same family as my friends. But that's okay. Everyone is different. I'm good at art. I like to read stories. My favorite color changes every day. Today it's purple. I hope you're happy wherever you are. I hope someday you'll look for me like I'm looking for you. Love, Maya, the girl you don't know. She handed the letter to Pamela. Can you mail this? Pamela's throat tightened. Where would I mail it to, sweetheart? I don't know. Maya's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes were sad. I guess that's the problem, isn't it? You can't send a letter to someone when you don't know where they are. After the session ended and Maya returned to class, Pamela sat alone in her office and read the letter again. She'd been a school counselor for 15 years and had worked with hundreds of children through divorces, deaths, family trauma of every kind. But something about Maya's quiet, articulate grief hit differently. She picked up her phone and called the number on file for Maya's mother. It went straight to voicemail. Dr. Reeves, this is Pamela Stone, the counselor at Riverside Elementary. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you regarding Maya as soon as possible. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. She left her number and hung up, hoping that Natasha Reeves understood the word urgent when she heard it. Across town, Julian Cross was in back-to-back meetings, trying to focus on quarterly projections and development timelines. But his mind kept drifting to the Mercer deal, to Victoria Aldridge's challenge to figure out who he was beyond his company. Marcus appeared in his office doorway during a rare 15-minute gap. You got an email that I think you should see. From? Marcus hesitated. Someone you knew 2 years ago. Natasha Reeves. Julian's head snapped up. What? She wants to meet. Says it's urgent and personal. Marcus studied his boss's face. Should I schedule something? Julian's heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with stress or caffeine. Natasha. He hadn't heard from her in 2 years, had resigned himself to never seeing her again. And now she was reaching out? What could be so urgent? Only one way to find out. Marcus's tone was careful. Should I set something up? Julian's mind spun through possibilities. Maybe she needed help with hospital software. Maybe she was fundraising for her department. Maybe. Yes. Tomorrow if possible. I'll make it happen. After Marcus left, Julian pulled out the photograph from his desk drawer again. Natasha's smile. Her eyes that seemed to see right through his carefully constructed armor. He remembered the way she'd argued with him about artificial intelligence in diagnostic medicine, passionate and brilliant and completely unintimidated by his success or status. He remembered the way she'd looked at him in the quiet hours of the morning, like he was something precious rather than useful. He'd told himself for 2 years that walking away had been the right choice. They were both too career-focused. A relationship would have been a distraction neither of them could afford. It was better to keep it perfect and finite. But the truth, if he was honest, was simpler and more frightening. She'd made him feel things he wasn't ready to feel. She'd made him want things he'd convinced himself he didn't need. She'd threatened the careful walls he'd built around his heart. So he'd let her go. Now she was coming back. And Julian had no idea if he should be terrified or hopeful. His phone buzzed. Marcus, efficient as always, had already sent a calendar invitation. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Crosstech Conference Room B, Natasha Reeves, meeting subject listed simply as personal discussion. Julian accepted the invitation and tried to return to his work. But concentration was impossible. Tomorrow felt both too far away and too soon. What could Natasha possibly need to tell him that was both urgent and personal? Tomorrow, he'd find out. And neither of them had any idea that the answer would change everything. If you believe every child deserves to know where they come from, hit that like button right now. And drop a comment telling me, what would you do in Natasha's position? Would you have reached out sooner, or would fear have kept you silent? Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell a truth that might change everything. And sometimes the hardest part of love is admitting we need help carrying it. This story is just beginning. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens when Julian discovers the truth. Because what comes next will test everything both of them thought they knew about family, responsibility, and second chances. Stay with me. The next part of this journey will break your heart and put it back together again. The conference room on the 45th floor of the Millennium Tower felt different at 9:45 in the morning. Julian had arrived early, unable to sit still in his office. He'd changed his tie twice. He'd rehearsed casual greetings in his head until they all sounded ridiculous. He felt like a teenager preparing for a first date rather than a successful CEO about to have a business meeting. Except this wasn't business. Natasha had been clear about that. Personal and urgent. Marcus poked his head in. She's here. Early, actually. Waiting in the lobby. Julian's pulse jumped. Send her up. You want me to sit in on this meeting? No. This is private. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. He disappeared, and Julian was left alone with his spiraling thoughts. What could possibly be so urgent that Natasha would reach out after 2 years of silence? The door opened. And there she was. She looked different than he remembered but also exactly the same. Her hair was shorter, cut in a professional bob. She wore slacks and a blazer, her hospital ID still clipped to her pocket as if she'd come straight from a shift. There were faint shadows under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. But her eyes, those intelligent, searching eyes, were unchanged. Julian. Her voice was steady, but he could see her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her bag. Natasha. He stood, suddenly unsure of protocol. Did you shake hands with someone you'd been intimate with? Did you hug them? He settled for an awkward half-gesture toward the chair across from him. Please, sit. She sat. He sat. The glass table between them felt like an ocean. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Her professional tone was armor, and Julian recognized it because he used the same one. Of course. Your email said it was urgent. It is. She took a breath, and Julian watched her gather courage for something. Before I tell you why I'm here, I need to ask you something. Do you remember the night we met? Every detail. The words came out before Julian could stop them, more honest than he'd intended. Something flickered in her expression. Relief, maybe. Or fear. Good. That makes this slightly less awkward. She opened her bag and pulled out a folder. Julian, that night had consequences. Consequences I didn't discover until after you'd left for Singapore. Julian's mind raced through possibilities, but none of them prepared him for what she said next. I got pregnant. I tried to find you, but you were out of the country and I only knew your first name and company. By the time I finally tracked down your full information, 6 months had passed, and I convinced myself you wouldn't want to be contacted. That you'd moved on. That it would be unfair to burden you with something we'd both agreed was just one night. The words hit Julian like physical blows. Pregnant. 6 months. The math was simple and devastating. You had a baby. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. I had a baby. Natasha's hands were shaking as she opened the folder. Her name is Maya. She's 6 years old. And she's the most incredible person I've ever known. She slid a photograph across the table. Julian picked it up with numb fingers. The little girl in the photo had his eyes. His exact gray eyes, the ones he'd inherited from his mother. She had Natasha's delicate features, but the expression, that serious, thoughtful expression, was pure Julian. She was smiling in the photo, holding up a painting of what looked like a sunset, and she was beautiful in a way that made Julian's chest ache. I have a daughter. The words felt impossible in his mouth. Yes. For 6 years. Yes. Anger flared, sudden and hot. And you never told me. 6 years, Natasha. You never thought I had a right to know? Natasha's eyes flashed. Don't you dare. Don't you dare act like I kept this from you out of spite or carelessness. I tried to find you. You were gone. And when you came back, I was a single mother with a 2-year-old, barely surviving my residency, and you were a billionaire CEO who'd made it very clear that one night was all you wanted. I would have wanted to know about my child. Would you? Natasha leaned forward, and Julian saw the years of stress and fear and loneliness carved into her posture. Really? You, who told me you weren't built for family? You, who said your company was your life? You would have welcomed the news that a woman you barely knew was pregnant with your child? Yes. Julian's voice was firm, but doubt crept in. Would he have? At 29, obsessed with building his empire, convinced that emotional attachments were weaknesses? The honest answer was, he didn't know. Natasha saw the doubt in his face and her expression softened slightly. I made the best decision I could with the information I had. Maybe it was wrong. Maybe I should have tried harder to find you. But Julian, I was terrified. Of your rejection, of you trying to take her from me, of appending both our lives. So you just decided I didn't deserve to be her father? I decided she deserved stability more than she deserved the chaos of me tracking down a man who might not want her. The words hung between them, sharp and painful and impossible to take back. Julian looked at the photograph again. This little girl, Maya, had existed for 6 years without him. She'd taken her first steps, said her first words, learned to read, started school, all without him knowing she existed. What's she like? His voice cracked on the question. Natasha's expression transformed, the defensiveness melting into pure maternal love. She's brilliant. She reads at a 4th grade level already. She's an artist, sees the world in colors and emotions that the rest of us miss. She's gentle and thoughtful and asks questions that make you reevaluate everything you thought you knew. Does she know about me? She knows she has a father who doesn't know she exists. Natasha's voice was quiet. That's how she puts it. My daddy doesn't know me. So I don't have a daddy. Julian felt like he'd been punched. She thinks I don't know her because I don't care. She doesn't think anything yet. She's 6. But she's starting to ask questions I don't know how to answer. So you're here because you need me to what? Write a check? Sign away parental rights? What? Natasha's eyes flared with anger again. I don't want your money, Julian. I never wanted your money. I'm here because my daughter asked me to find her father. Because she sees other kids with dads and wonders why she doesn't have one. Because keeping this secret is hurting her, and I won't let my fear hurt my child anymore. So you want me to meet her? I want you to have the option. If you want to be part of her life, we can figure out what that looks like. If you don't, then I need you to tell me now so I can explain it to her in a way that doesn't destroy her. Julian stared at this woman he'd thought about for 2 years, this woman who'd just upended his entire world, this woman who'd kept his daughter from him and was somehow both wrong and right about all of it. I want to meet her. The decision was instant and absolute. I want to know my daughter. Natasha nodded slowly. Okay. But Julian, I need you to understand something. You can't just meet her once and disappear. You can't be a disruption in her life. She's a child, and she deserves consistency. I'm not going to disappear. Can you promise that? Because this isn't a business deal you can walk away from when it gets difficult. This is a little girl who's already wondering why her father doesn't know her. If you commit to this, you commit all the way. Julian looked at the photograph again. Maya's eyes, his eyes, looking back at him with an expression of cautious hope. He thought about Victoria Aldridge's words. The founders who are happiest after the sale are the ones who have something beyond the business. Here was something beyond the business. Someone who shared his DNA, his eyes, his serious expression. Someone who existed whether he acknowledged her or not. The question wasn't whether he wanted to meet her. The question was whether he was brave enough to let her matter. I promise. I'm not going anywhere. Natasha studied his face for a long moment, searching for sincerity. Finally, she nodded. Okay. We'll start slow. A meeting in a public place, supervised. Let her get to know you without pressure. When? This weekend. There's a children's museum she loves. Saturday at 2? I'll be there. Natasha gathered the folder, but before she could leave, Julian stopped her. Wait. Can I ask you something? What? Why now? After 6 years, why are you telling me now? Natasha was quiet for a moment. Because she asked me to. Because her school counselor is concerned about her emotional well-being. Because I'm failing her by working too much and being too absent, and I realized she deserves better. She deserves the chance to know her father. Even if it terrifies me. You're not failing her. Julian's voice was soft. You raised an incredible child on your own. That's not failure. Tell that to her when she's sitting alone in our apartment wondering why her mother is always at the hospital and her father doesn't know she exists. Natasha's voice broke slightly. I'm doing the best I can, but my best isn't enough. Then let me help. Natasha looked at him with something like hope mixed with fear. Saturday. 2 o'clock. Children's Museum on Howard Street. Don't be late. I won't. After she left, Julian sat alone in the conference room for 20 minutes, staring at the photograph she'd left behind. He had a daughter. A 6-year-old daughter who liked art and read above her grade level and thought in colors. Marcus appeared in the doorway. You okay, boss? I have a daughter. I gathered that from the context clues. Marcus sat down across from him. How are you feeling? Terrified. Angry. Grateful. Confused. All of it at once. That sounds about right. Marcus looked at the photo. She looks like you. She looks like someone I already love and I haven't even met her yet. Is that possible? You're asking the wrong guy. I don't have kids. But I've watched my sister with her daughter, and yeah, I think that's exactly how it works. Julian ran his hand through his hair. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to be a father. I barely know how to be a functional human being outside of work. Lucky for you, 6-year-olds have low expectations. Show up. Be present. Don't lie to her. That's pretty much the whole job description. What about Simone? What about her? Julian thought about his girlfriend, about their casual relationship built on convenience rather than connection. I need to end it. It wouldn't be fair to drag her into this. Probably a good call. Marcus stood. For what it's worth, I think you're going to be a good dad. You're methodical, you're committed when you care about something, and you're capable of more emotion than you let yourself feel most of the time. How do you know that? Because I've known you for 10 years, and I've never seen you keep a photograph of anyone in your desk drawer. But you kept Natasha's. That tells me everything I need to know about your capacity to care. After Marcus left, Julian cancelled his afternoon meetings and went home early for the first time in years. His penthouse apartment felt different now, too sterile, too adult, too empty of the things a child would need. He pulled out his laptop and started researching. What do 6-year-old girls like? What books should he read to understand child development? What toys were appropriate? He fell down a rabbit hole of parenting blogs and psychology articles, trying to cram 6 years of missed knowledge into a few hours. His phone rang. Simone. Julian answered with a heavy heart. Hey. You've been distant. More than usual. What's going on? Julian appreciated her directness. We need to talk. Can you come over? That sounds ominous. It's not ominous. It's just honest. An hour later, Simone sat on his couch, perfectly composed even as Julian explained the situation. A daughter. From before they'd started dating. A daughter he'd just learned existed. So you're going to be a father now. Simone's voice was neutral. I've been a father for 6 years. I just didn't know it. You know what I mean. Active parenting. Custody arrangements. Your life is about to change completely. Yes. Simone was quiet for a moment. And us? Julian took her hand gently. You deserve someone who can give you their full attention. Who's building a life that has space for you in it. I'm about to be in the deep end of figuring out fatherhood, and that's not fair to you. So you're ending things. I'm setting you free to find someone who can give you what you deserve. To her credit, Simone didn't argue or cry or make it difficult. She simply nodded. I appreciate the honesty. For what it's worth, I think you'll be a good father. You're more capable of caring than you think you are. Why does everyone keep saying that? Simone smiled sadly. Because it's true, and you're the only one who doesn't see it. She stood, kissed his cheek, and left without drama. Julian sat alone in his too-perfect apartment and pulled up the photo of Maya on his phone. Natasha had texted it to him after their meeting with a simple message. Her favorite color changes daily. Today it's yellow. She likes pancakes shaped like animals and stories about brave kids. She's afraid of the dark but pretends she's not. She's everything. Julian stared at the photo until the image blurred. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He cried. For the lost time. For the little girl who thought her father didn't know her. For the man he'd been who was so afraid of connection that he'd have run from this. For the man he needed to become. Saturday arrived both too slowly and too quickly. Julian had barely slept, running through scenarios in his head. What if Maya didn't like him? What if he said the wrong thing? What if he proved Natasha right, that he wasn't built for this? He arrived at the Children's Museum 15 minutes early, dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt that he'd changed 3 times before leaving his apartment. He'd brought a gift, a telescope he'd agonized over in the toy store, hoping it was appropriate, hoping it wouldn't seem like he was trying to buy her affection. Natasha arrived exactly at 2, holding the hand of a little girl who looked even more like him in person than she had in photographs. Maya wore a purple dress and light-up sneakers. Her hair was in 2 braids. She looked at Julian with cautious curiosity, those gray eyes, his eyes, studying him with an intensity that took his breath away. Maya, this is Julian Cross. He's a friend of Mommy's. Natasha's voice was carefully neutral. Julian, this is my daughter, Maya. Julian knelt down to be at Maya's eye level. Hello, Maya. It's really nice to meet you. Hello. Maya's voice was soft, polite. Mommy says you wanted to meet me. I did. Very much. Why? The directness of the question caught Julian off guard. Natasha had warned him that Maya asked profound questions, but he hadn't expected to be confronted with one immediately. Because your mom told me about you, and I thought you sounded like a very interesting person to know. What did she tell you? That you're an artist. That you love to read. That you're very smart and thoughtful. Did she tell you I don't have a daddy? Julian's heart clenched. She mentioned that, yes. Do you have kids? Julian glanced at Natasha, who gave a small nod. Permission to tell the truth. Actually, I do. I have one daughter. But I only just found out about her recently. Maya's expression shifted, interest sparking. You didn't know you had a daughter? No. Her mother couldn't find me to tell me. So I missed a lot of her life. That's sad. Do you know her now? I'm getting to know her. Julian's voice was thick with emotion. I'm hoping she'll let me be part of her life. I think she will. Maya's certainty was absolute. Kids always want to know their daddies. Even when the daddies mess up. You're very wise. Isabel says I'm an old soul. What does that mean? It means you understand things that most people take a long time to learn. Oh. Maya considered this. Do you want to see the museum? There's an art room where you can make stuff. I would love that. They spent the next 2 hours exploring exhibits. Julian watched Maya light up in the interactive art installation, her small hands creating swirling patterns of color on digital screens. She explained her artistic process with the seriousness of a professional painter. I use colors to show feelings. Like, red is angry or excited. Blue is sad but peaceful. Yellow is happy. Purple is thinking hard about something. What color am I? Julian asked, echoing the question from Natasha's description. Maya studied him carefully. You're gray right now. Like you're trying to figure something out. What do you think I'm trying to figure out? If I like you. Julian's breath caught. And have you figured out if you like me? I think so. You listen when I talk. A lot of grown-ups pretend to listen but they're really thinking about other stuff. You actually listen. Thank you. That's a very nice compliment. Can I show you my favorite part? There's a building room with blocks and you can make anything. Please. As they built an elaborate tower together, Natasha watching from a nearby bench, Maya asked the question Julian had been both dreading and hoping for. Julian? Yes? Are you my daddy? Julian's hands stilled on the blocks. He looked at Natasha, who nodded encouragement. The truth. They'd agreed on the truth. Yes, Maya. I'm your biological father. What does biological mean? It means we're connected by science. We share DNA. You got your gray eyes from me. Maya touched her own face, as if seeing her eyes for the first time. Really? Really? Do I have other things from you? Julian studied her face, looking for himself in her features. You have my serious expression. And your mom says you're good with patterns and logic. I'm good at those things too. So we're the same? In some ways. But you're also your own person. With your own thoughts and feelings and artistic talent that's all yours. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing. If you're my daddy, where have you been? The question was fair and devastating. I didn't know about you. If I had known, I would have been here. Why didn't mommy tell you? That's complicated, sweetheart. But it wasn't because there was anything wrong with you. It was never about you. Okay. Maya accepted this with the resilience of childhood. Are you going to stay now? I would really like to. If that's okay with you. What if you change your mind? I won't. How do you know? Because you're my daughter. And now that I know you exist, you're the most important person in my world. Maya looked at him with those two knowing eyes. You're turning blue. What does blue mean again? Sad but peaceful. Like you're sad you missed stuff but happy you're here now. That's exactly right. Julian felt tears threatening. You see things very clearly. Isabel says it's a gift. She says some people look at the world and see what's there, but I see what it means. That is a gift. Maya reached out and took Julian's hand. Her small fingers wrapped around his large ones, and Julian felt his world shift fundamentally on its axis. This was his daughter. This brilliant, artistic, insightful little person was his daughter. Can you come to my house sometime? I want to show you my paintings. I would love that. When they left the museum 3 hours later, Maya hugged Julian goodbye with the unself-consciousness of childhood. Julian held her like she was made of glass, afraid to break this perfect, fragile connection they'd built. After Maya and Natasha left, Julian sat in his car in the parking lot and called Marcus. How'd it go? She's perfect. She's the most incredible person I've ever met and I'm terrified I'm going to screw this up. You won't. How do you know? Because you've never cared about anything as much as you care about not screwing this up. That's half the battle right there. Over the following weeks, Julian and Maya settled into a routine. Saturday afternoons at various locations around the city. The aquarium, where Maya named all the fish and assigned them personality traits. The botanical gardens, where she collected leaves to press in a book. The library, where she showed Julian her favorite books and he read to her with voices that made her giggle. Each visit, they grew more comfortable. Maya's initial caution melted into affection. She started calling him Julian, and then, tentatively, Dad. The first time she said it, Julian had to excuse himself to the bathroom to cry in private. But success with Maya came with complications elsewhere. Julian's board questioned his new schedule. Why are you leaving early on Saturdays? Why are you declining Sunday meetings? The Mercer deal was still on the table, but Julian found himself caring less about it with each passing week. Victoria Aldridge called him personally. I heard through the grapevine that you have a daughter now. Word travels fast. It does in our circles. How's that going? It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And the most terrifying. Good. Fear means you care. When can we schedule a follow-up on the acquisition? I'm not sure I want to sell anymore. There was a pause. Because of the daughter? Because I'm realizing my company isn't my life. It's just my job. And there are more important things than jobs. Another pause. You know, Mr. Cross, I've been in business for 30 years. I've acquired 17 companies. The founders I respect most are the ones who have the courage to reevaluate their priorities. Why don't we restructure the deal? You maintain controlling interest, I come on as a major investor and advisor. You get the capital influx without losing autonomy. Why would you do that? Because the Julian Cross who's learning to be a father is going to be a better CEO than the one who had nothing but work. People with something to lose make smarter decisions. The new deal was structured within a week. Julian got the investment he needed to expand without selling his company's soul. And more importantly, he got to keep his flexible schedule. But the biggest complication wasn't work. It was Natasha. Every time Julian picked up Maya or dropped her off, he and Natasha fell into easy conversation. About Maya, at first. Then about work, their shared interest in healthcare innovation. Then about everything else. Julian found himself looking forward to those handoff conversations almost as much as his time with Maya. Natasha was exactly as he remembered, brilliant, passionate, funny in ways that caught him off guard. But she was also different. More grounded. More openly emotional. Motherhood had softened some of her sharp edges without dulling her intelligence. One evening, Maya fell asleep during a movie at Julian's apartment. He'd spent weeks transforming his sterile guest room into a space fit for a 6-year-old, with art supplies and books and a bed shaped like a castle that Maya had squealed over. Natasha helped him tuck Maya in, and they found themselves alone in his living room, the city lights spreading out below them. "This is where you were that night." Natasha moved to the balcony door. 2 years ago. I remember this view. I remember everything about that night. Natasha turned to look at him. "Why didn't you try to find me?" The question was fair. Julian had asked himself the same thing countless times. "Because I was scared. You made me feel things I wasn't ready to feel. You challenged me in ways I wasn't ready to be challenged. It was easier to let you be a perfect memory than risk you becoming a complicated reality. And now? Now I realize complicated reality is better than perfect memory. Now I realize I was an idiot." Natasha smiled sadly. "We were both idiots. I should have tried harder to find you. You were protecting yourself and Maya. I understand that now." "Do you?" Natasha moved closer. "Do you understand why I'm still protecting us?" "What do you mean?" "This. Us. Whatever this is. It's dangerous, Julian." "Why?" "Because Maya's already falling in love with you. And I'm trying very hard not to do the same thing." Julian's heart stopped. "Why are you trying not to?" "Because you broke my heart once already. Because if this doesn't work, it's not just me who gets hurt. It's our daughter. Then we make it work." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because loving you is the easiest thing in the world and trusting you is the hardest." Natasha's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I've been in love with you since that night 2 years ago. I've spent 6 years trying to convince myself I wasn't. And now you're here, being everything I always wanted you to be, and I'm terrified." Julian closed the distance between them. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I can't promise I'll always get it right. But I can promise I'm not going anywhere. I can promise that you and Maya are my priority. And I can promise that I've been in love with you since the moment you called me out for avoiding interesting conversations. You remember that?" "I remember everything." They stood inches apart, the tension between them electric. Natasha's eyes searched his face. "If we do this, if we try to be a family, you have to be all in. No running when it gets hard." "I'm all in." The kiss was inevitable. Soft at first, tentative, and then deeper as 2 years of longing poured out. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "Isabel told me I was an idiot for not fighting for you 2 years ago." Natasha rested her forehead against his. "I'm starting to think she was right. Your nanny has good instincts." "She does. She also knows I'm here and has probably guessed why I'm still here." "Is she going to approve?" "She already does. She's been telling me for weeks that you look at me like I'm the only person in the room." "You are." They spent the night talking, carefully keeping their voices low so as not to wake Maya. They talked about the past, the present, the future they might build together. They talked about custody arrangements and parenting philosophies and whether it was too soon to think about combining their lives more formally. As dawn broke over the city, Natasha curled into Julian's side on the couch, comfortable in a way she hadn't been in years. "I should go. Maya will wake up soon and have questions if we're both here. Let her have questions. We'll answer them together." "Julian." "Natasha." She smiled against his chest. "Fine. But you're making pancakes. Shaped like animals. It's the price of admission to family breakfast." "I can do that." Maya woke an hour later to find both her parents in the kitchen, Julian attempting to make pancake shapes while Natasha supervised and offered unhelpful commentary. "Are you and Mommy friends now?" Maya asked, her artistic intuition clearly picking up on the shift in energy. "We're trying to be more than friends." Julian looked at Natasha, who nodded permission to continue. "We're trying to be a family. The three of us together. How would you feel about that?" Maya's face lit up like the sun. "Like, you'd be here all the time? And we'd all live together? Maybe eventually. We have to figure out the details. But yes, that's the idea." Maya launched herself at Julian, hugging him with the full force of 6-year-old enthusiasm. "I wished for this. On my birthday candles and on shooting stars and every time I saw 11:11 on the clock. Your wishes came true." Natasha knelt down to join the hug, the three of them tangled together in Julian's pristine kitchen. For the first time in his adult life, Julian felt complete. The following months were a study in building something new from complicated pieces. Julian formally established paternity and worked with Natasha to create a custody arrangement that prioritized Maya's stability. They decided against formalizing shared custody through the courts, choosing instead to be flexible based on Maya's needs and their work schedules. Julian attended his first parent-teacher conference and met Mrs. Rivera, who couldn't hide her surprise at Maya's previously absent father suddenly being very present. "Mr. Cross, it's wonderful to finally meet you." Mrs. Rivera shook his hand warmly. "Maya has been so much happier since you came into her life." "I'm the one who's happier." Julian meant it. "She talks about you constantly. You and the telescope you gave her. She's been drawing constellations and writing stories about space explorers. She's incredible. She is." Mrs. Rivera's expression grew more serious. "I want you to know, I was concerned about Maya a few months ago. She was withdrawn, sad in ways that worried me. But the change in her since you've been present has been remarkable. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Julian felt the weight of responsibility and privilege in equal measure. "I'm just showing up. Trying to be present." That's exactly what she needed. Julian also met Dr. Pamela Stone, the school counselor who'd been working with Maya. Pamela pulled him aside after a school art show where Maya's emotional landscape paintings were displayed with pride. "I wanted to thank you." Pamela's voice was warm. "When I first started working with Maya, she was a child in pain. She felt invisible. Now, she feels seen. I'm just trying to make up for lost time." "You can't make up for it. But you can make the most of the time you have now. And that's exactly what you're doing." The art show was a revelation. Julian stood in front of Maya's latest painting, a family portrait unlike anything he'd ever seen. It wasn't realistic. Instead, it was abstract, three figures made of swirling colors, intertwined and supporting each other. The title card read, "My Family, Finding Each Other." "What do you think, Dad?" Maya appeared at his elbow, nervous and hopeful. "I think it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Really? Really?" Julian knelt down to her level. "Can you explain it to me?" Maya pointed to the largest figure, made of blues and purples. "That's Mommy. She's calm colors because she helps people feel better. But there's also some red because she works really hard and sometimes she's stressed." She pointed to a smaller figure, all yellows and greens. "That's me. Happy colors because I'm happy now." "And this one?" Julian pointed to the third figure, grays and blues with streaks of gold. "That's you. You were gray when I met you, remember? But now you're getting more gold. Because you're happier too. Because of you. Because we're a family now." Julian pulled his daughter into a hug, not caring that they were in a crowded school hallway. "You're right. We're a family now. But not everything was easy." Natasha struggled with letting Julian share parenting duties after years of handling everything alone. They had their first real fight about scheduling. "You can't just change our plans last minute because a meeting ran long." Natasha's voice was tight with frustration. "Maya was expecting you at 6. I had to cancel a research presentation to stay with her. I'm sorry. The meeting was with investors and it went longer than expected." "Then you leave the meeting. You made a commitment to our daughter." "I know that." "Do you? Because it feels like you're still prioritizing work when it's convenient. That's not fair. I've rearranged my entire life around being present for Maya. And I appreciate that. But one good month doesn't erase 6 years of absence." Natasha's voice cracked. "I need to know you're reliable before I can really trust this." The words stung because they were true. "I'm trying, Natasha. I'm trying to balance everything and sometimes I'm going to fail. But I'm not giving up." "I know." Natasha softened slightly. "I'm sorry. I'm just scared." "Of what?" "That you'll realize this is too hard and walk away. That Maya will get attached and you'll disappoint her. That I'll let myself fully love you and you'll break my heart again." Julian pulled her close. "I'm not going anywhere. And if I mess up, which I will, we'll work through it. Together." They worked through it. Julian became more rigid about protecting family time. Natasha became more willing to share responsibility. They learned each other's parenting styles, negotiated rules and boundaries, figured out how to be partners in raising their daughter. And slowly, carefully, they built a romantic relationship alongside their parenting partnership. 6 months after their first meeting, Julian took Natasha to dinner at the restaurant where they'd had coffee after the gala. She laughed when she realized where they were. "You're sentimental. I'm nostalgic. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Sentimental is dwelling on the past. Nostalgic is appreciating how far we've come." Over dessert, Julian pulled out a small box. Natasha's eyes widened. "Before you panic, it's not what you think." He opened the box to reveal a key. "It's to my apartment. I want you and Maya to have a space there. Her own room is already set up, but I want you to feel like it's your home too. Not just a visitation space." Natasha took the key with trembling fingers. "This is a big step." "I know. No pressure. But I want you to know that I'm committed to building a life with both of you. Whatever that looks like, whatever pace feels right. What if I told you I've been thinking about the same thing? That Isabel pointed out I have a spare key to your place on my keychain even though you never officially gave me one?" Julian laughed. "You stole my key?" "I borrowed it to make a copy. For emergencies." Fine, I stole it because I wanted to feel like I belonged there." "You do belong there." Julian took her hand across the table. "You've always belonged there. From the first night we met, some part of me knew you were supposed to be in my life." "That's incredibly cheesy. But true." Natasha smiled, tears in her eyes. "I love you. I've loved you for 2 years. I'm tired of being scared of that. I love you too. And I promise to spend every day proving I'm worthy of that love." The next morning, Julian woke to his phone ringing. "Marcus. Turn on the news. Channel 4. "Why? What's wrong?" "Just turn it on." Julian grabbed the remote, and his stomach dropped. There, on the morning news, was a photo of him, Natasha, and Maya at the park from the previous weekend. The headline read, "Tech CEO's secret love child, 6-year cover-up exposed." How did they get this? Someone must have recognized you and sold the photo. Marcus's voice was grim. "It's trending online. Your board is calling an emergency meeting. Let them call. Julian's voice was steel. I'm not hiding my family. I'm not suggesting you hide. But you need a strategy for handling this. The strategy is the truth. I have a daughter I recently learned about. Her mother and I are building a life together. Anyone who has a problem with that isn't someone whose opinion I value. After hanging up, Julian called Natasha. She'd already seen the news. I'm so sorry. Her voice was thick with tears. I never wanted this kind of attention from Maya. It's not your fault. We'll handle it together. The press is camped outside my apartment building. I can't get Maya to school without them photographing her. Bring her to my place. I'll send my car. We'll figure this out. Julian? Yeah. I'm scared. Me too. But we're going to protect her. Whatever it takes. The media frenzy lasted a week. Tabloids dug into Natasha's past, into Julian's dating history, speculating wildly about the nature of their relationship and the circumstances of Maya's birth. Through it all, Julian and Natasha presented a united front. They gave one interview to a reputable journalist, telling their story on their own terms. Julian was honest about not knowing Maya existed. Natasha was honest about her fear and her choice to raise Maya alone. They both emphasized that their focus was on their daughter's well-being, not public opinion. The interview humanized them. Public sentiment shifted from scandal to sympathy. People understood complicated situations. They understood fear and second chances and the messiness of real life. Through it all, Julian's board supported him. Victoria Aldrich called personally. The founder who's learning to navigate parenting and public scrutiny with grace is exactly the kind of person I want running this company. Don't let the noise distract you from what matters. Maya, thankfully, was too young to fully understand the media attention. Julian and Natasha kept her insulated, maintained her routine, assured her that the cameras and questions would go away soon. You're so famous, Dad. Maya said it with 6-year-old wonder. Like a movie star. Not quite. I just make boring computer software. Not boring. Important. You help doctors help people. Mommy told me. Did she? She says you're brilliant. And kind. And that she's lucky she met you. Julian glanced at Natasha, who was trying and failing to look innocent. She said all that, huh? I might have mentioned it once or twice. Natasha's smile was soft. A year after their first meeting at the Children's Museum, Julian proposed. Not with fanfare or elaborate planning, but in a moment of pure, simple truth. They were in Natasha's apartment, the three of them working on a puzzle together. Maya was explaining her strategy for finding corner pieces. Natasha was laughing at Julian's complete inability to see patterns that Maya found obvious. Julian looked at these two people, his family, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Marry me. Natasha's hands froze over the puzzle. What? Marry me. Not because we have a child together. Not because it makes sense logically. But because I love you and I want to spend every day for the rest of my life building this with you. Dad, are you proposing to Mommy? Maya's eyes were huge. I am. What do you think? Should I? Yes. Maya's certainty was absolute. We should all have the same last name. It's confusing at school when I have to explain why my parents have different names. Natasha was crying and laughing at the same time. You don't even have a ring. I have a ring. Julian pulled a small box from his pocket. I've been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Turns out the right moment is right now, doing puzzles on your living room floor with our daughter. He opened the box. The ring was simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light. Natasha Reeves, will you marry me? Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you. Maya cheered. Can I be the flower girl? You can be anything you want. Julian slipped the ring on Natasha's finger, then pulled both his girls into his arms. You're my family. My everything. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Natasha's mother's garden. Maya was indeed the flower girl, wearing purple because it was her favorite color that week. She took her role very seriously, carefully scattering petals and then standing beside her parents as they exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Natasha, you've given me the greatest gift imaginable. Not just our daughter, though she's extraordinary. But the gift of believing I could be more than I thought I was capable of being. You challenged me to be vulnerable, to be present, to be fully human. I promised to show up every day. To listen. To be your partner in all things. To love you and Maya with everything I have. Julian, 2 years ago, I thought I'd lost my chance at love with you. I convinced myself that one perfect night was all we'd ever have. But that night gave me Maya, and Maya brought you back to us. You've become the father I always hoped you'd be and the partner I never dared to dream I'd have. I promise to trust you. To build this life with you. To remind you every day that you're exactly who we need you to be. Maya, not to be outdone, insisted on saying something too. She stood between her parents and spoke with the seriousness of a child who'd thought carefully about her words. I used to wish for a daddy. Now I have one. I used to wish my mommy wasn't always sad. Now she's happy. I used to wish we were a real family. Now we are. I promise to keep making art and asking questions and being me. And you guys promise to keep loving each other and loving me. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The reception was small, just close friends and family. Marcus gave a toast that made Julian laugh and cry simultaneously. Isabel, Maya's beloved nanny who'd become part of their family, spoke about watching Maya transform from a lonely child to a confident, joyful little girl. Late in the evening, as the party wound down, Julian found himself alone with Natasha on the same balcony where they'd first met 3 years earlier. Have I told you today that you're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen? You have. But I don't mind hearing it again. Julian pulled her close. How did we get here? From one night to this? A lot of mistakes and fear and finally getting brave enough to choose each other. I'd make all the same mistakes if they led me here. Natasha smiled. Don't tell Maya that. She needs to believe we know what we're doing. Do we? Not even a little bit. But we're figuring it out together. That's all parenting is. 3 years later, they stood in the same hospital where Natasha worked, welcoming a new addition to their family. A son they named Alexander, who had Julian's dark hair and Natasha's nose and Maya's serious expression. Maya, now 9, held her baby brother with the careful reverence of someone who understood how precious new life was. He's so tiny. He looks like a little alien. All babies look like aliens at first. Julian sat beside her, one arm around his daughter, the other supporting his wife who was exhausted and radiant. Will he like me? He'll love you. You're his big sister. You're going to teach him everything. Maya looked up at her parents. Are you happy? So happy I can't even find words for it. Natasha's voice was soft. Me too. Julian pressed a kiss to Maya's head. You made all of this possible, you know. You asked to find your daddy, and that brave question changed all of our lives. I'm glad I asked. So am I. Later, when both children were asleep and the hospital room was quiet, Julian and Natasha sat together in the dim light. Remember when I told you I wasn't built for this? Family, domesticity, emotional connection? I remember. I was so wrong. This is what I was built for. I just didn't know it yet. We were both lost. Natasha leaned into him. I was so focused on my career and proving myself that I forgot what actually mattered. What matters? This. Us. Our kids. The life we're building. Work is important, but it's not everything. Who are you and what have you done with the woman who worked 80-hour weeks? Natasha laughed. That woman learned that her daughter needed her present more than her patients needed her perfect. I'm proud of us. Julian's voice was quiet. For figuring it out. For choosing each other. For building something real from complicated pieces. Me too. 5 years after that first meeting at the Children's Museum, Julian stood in his company's conference room, now renovated and warm rather than sterile and intimidating. He was preparing for his biggest presentation yet, not to investors or board members, but to a group of young entrepreneurs in a mentorship program he'd founded. Maya's drawing hung on the wall behind him, the family portrait she'd made in first grade, professionally framed. It had become the centerpiece of his office, a reminder of what actually mattered. The young entrepreneurs filed in, nervous and eager. Julian smiled at them, remembering when he'd been in their shoes, convinced that success meant sacrificing everything personal for professional achievement. Thank you all for being here. I'm Julian Cross, and I'm going to tell you about the biggest failure and greatest success of my life. It's the same story. He told them about missing 6 years of his daughter's life. About prioritizing all the wrong things. About learning that success without people to share it with was just expensive loneliness. I thought building a billion-dollar company would make me happy. It didn't. I thought having the right car, the right apartment, the right achievements would fill the void. They didn't. What made me happy was showing up for my daughter's school play. Reading bedtime stories. Being present for my wife when she had a hard day. Building a life that mattered to the people I loved. One young woman raised her hand. But how do you balance it? I'm trying to start my company and I feel like I have to give it everything. You do have to give it everything. But everything doesn't mean every minute of every day. It means your best effort during the time you allocate. I'm a better CEO now than I was when I worked 80-hour weeks, because I'm not burned out. I'm not resentful. I have a life that fills me up so I have more to give. After the presentation, Marcus found Julian in his office. That was good. Really good. Thanks. Julian was packing up for the day, eager to get home for family dinner. Maya was making her famous, which is to say barely edible, attempt at spaghetti, and Alexander was going to help, which meant the kitchen would be a disaster. You know what I realized? Marcus leaned against the doorframe. 5 years ago, you would have scheduled this meeting at 6 p.m. and missed dinner. Now you schedule it at 3 and protect your evening. That's growth. That's survival. If I missed Maya's cooking, she'd never let me forget it. Julian's phone rang. Natasha. Hey, everything okay? Define okay. Alexander decided to help Maya by dumping an entire container of oregano in the sauce. Our kitchen smells like an Italian restaurant exploded. Julian laughed. I'm leaving now. I'll bring wine and backup pasta. You're my hero. I'm really not. I'm just a guy who finally figured out where he belongs. Where's that? With you. With our kids. Home. After he hung up, Julian took one last look around his office. The awards on the shelf. The articles about his company's success. The photo of him shaking hands with the mayor at some ribbon-cutting ceremony. They were nice. They were achievements he was proud of. But they weren't what he'd think about on his deathbed. He'd think about Maya's laugh. About Alexander's tiny hand wrapped around his finger. About Natasha's smile when he walked through the door. About the family dinners that were chaotic and perfect. About building a life that mattered not because of what he achieved but because of who he loved. Julian grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Dad, hurry. The kitchen is on fire." "Just kidding. But seriously, hurry." He smiled and typed back. "On my way. Love you." The response was immediate. "Love you too. Even though you're slow." That night, sitting around the table with saw-stained kids and a laughing wife, Julian felt the kind of success that couldn't be measured in dollars or market share. "Remember when I said I didn't have a daddy?" Maya said between bites of over-seasoned pasta. "That feels like a million years ago." "It does, doesn't it?" Natasha squeezed Julian's hand under the table. "Now I have the best daddy." Maya's certainty was absolute. "Even if he can't cook as good as me. Nobody cooks as good as you." Julian managed to say it with a straight face. "It's true. I'm gifted. So humble too. Isabel always says confidence is important." Speaking of Isabel, Julian turned to Natasha. "Did she confirm for Sunday dinner?" "She did. And she's bringing her famous dumplings, which will make up for my destroyed pasta." "Hey!" Maya protested with mock offense. After the kids were in bed, Julian and Natasha sat on their balcony, the same view Julian had stared at for years without really seeing it. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if Maya hadn't asked about her father? If you'd kept the secret?" Natasha was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. We'd both be lonelier. Maya would still be that sad little girl who felt invisible. You'd still be working 80-hour weeks thinking it would make you happy. And we'd have missed all of this. All of this." Natasha gestured at their life, contained in the warm lights of their home. "It's funny. I spent 6 years convinced I was protecting Maya by keeping her from you. Turns out I was just protecting myself from having to be vulnerable again. We were both protecting ourselves." Julian pulled her close. "We were both scared of needing people. And now? Now I can't imagine not needing you. Not needing Maya. Not needing our family. Character growth. That's what they call it in the books." Julian laughed. "Is that what this is? It's one of the things. It's also love and commitment and showing up every day even when it's hard. It is hard sometimes. The best things usually are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights, content in the life they'd built from broken pieces and second chances. Inside, Maya stirred in her sleep and smiled, dreaming of a family that was whole. Alexander slept in his crib, secure in a love he'd never have to question. And two people who'd once thought they weren't built for this discovered that sometimes the best parts of ourselves are the ones we didn't know existed until someone gave us a reason to find them. If this story reminded you that it's never too late to choose love, never too late to show up, never too late to become the person someone needs you to be, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that second chances are real. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Natasha's position? Would you have told Julian sooner? Would you have waited? I read every single comment and I want to know your thoughts. Because here's the truth. We all carry secrets. We all make mistakes. We all have moments where we choose fear over courage. But we also all have the capacity to change, to grow, to become more than we thought we were capable of being. Julian wasn't built to be a father until he had a daughter who needed him. Natasha wasn't built to share control until she had a partner worth trusting. Maya wasn't built to be invisible, she was just waiting for the people who would truly see her. And sometimes, the little girl who came to school with a driver but no daddy becomes the bridge that connects two souls who were always meant to find each other. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't start with love at all. They start with a secret, a revelation, and the courage to build something real from the wreckage of what could have been. This is Julian, Natasha, and Maya's story. But it's also a reminder that your story isn't over. That the choices you make today can change everything tomorrow. That showing up, even when you're scared, is the bravest thing you can do. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. Thank you for believing in second chances. Thank you for understanding that family isn't always simple, but it's always worth fighting for. Until next time, remember this. Love is a choice you make every single day. Choose wisely. Choose bravely. Choose love.